Well, thank you. Thank you for indulging some of my more naive questions. I appreciate it. I want to jump back in the time that we have left. This time is going by very quickly with you, Adrian, as I knew it would, having the benefit of a conversation with you a couple of weeks ago. Um, but I want to jump back. One of the questions that I get most frequently from, young upstarts who are interested in biotech and pursuing it as a career, folks coming out of graduate school, perhaps, or people who are looking to, kind of reverse course and join biotech from other industries is, the route of progression, right? Like, I want to get into biotech. What should I do? Should I be a science guy? Should I go be a finance guy? And you got this unique perspective because, like I said, I was classifying you as a chartered accountant and a CFO, but you've got the deal making experience. You've got the hard cold Excel spreadsheet experience, and also plenty of science experience. But I'm curious about how. It occurs to me that the financial chops that you've earned over the years would be like a great skill set to have in your current role. But then perhaps also there might be times where it's, sort of a drag to look at everything through the financial lens. So I want to jump back to that real quick and just kind of get your perspectives on where that financial and deal making experience has been like incredibly beneficial to you in your role as CEO at Adaptimmune, and perhaps maybe a little bit on where that experience, I don't know, weighs you down or otherwise causes you, internal strife.
Yeah. I think my starting point is that I'm not sure anything is appropriate, any reasonable route is appropriate preparation for being CEO. And if you think about it, if you thought, okay, well, what are the areas I need to understand to be the CEO of a biotechnology company, and you thought about this from a acquisition of knowledge and skills perspective, you'd say, okay, I need to spend 5 years in each of the component areas. Okay, all of our CEOs would be 140, and I'm not sure they'd have the energy to be a CEO at that point in time. I think the question is, okay, which bits of this prepared me well? But where were the gaps? And I think most of those places I look at, not actually from a skills and experience perspective, although that's clearly part of it, but from a sort of leadership perspective, because I think skills, particularly as CEO, you have the opportunity to build a team, and there's almost no set of skills that you can't find and have in your team. You don't need to have them all yourself by any stretch of the imagination. So then, what is it from that background that has been good, and what is it that from a leadership perspective, and where are the gaps? So I think the spaces where it was good for me was, I think business development and those transactional experiences, and including investing at SR1, etc., were exercises in integration, integrating disparate data and information to form a view and to make decisions and judgment, and very much not. Okay, these are the numbers, and this is what I'm going to do. Pulling it all together. And they're also, interestingly, I think the BD side was, if you think about, you go and you do, did 45 due diligences on very late stage assets that completed phase 3. You go and do diligence on one of those, you get to see everything that's happened in the last decade of drug development in that asset. It's an amazing privilege, actually. You get to think, well, why did you make that decision, and how did you think about that clinical trial, and that one failed, what did you do? And you get to understand all of the correspondence with the FDA. So it's like living an entire decade of drug development in that drug. You can basically vicariously access what the people who led that drug development sort of experienced over that period of time. And so that's an amazing opportunity to get a breadth of knowledge about how different companies have made different decisions and which turned out to be important and not. Um, so I think all of that is sort of like, okay, exercises the sort of integrative thinking chops. And also I think speaks to, the importance of those teams are teams that come together, break apart, come together, break apart. So building and effectively managing high performing teams, often overused phrase, but towards objectives, you sort of that piece is also there. I I I think where it also speaks to some things that I have that are peculiar. I think I was successful and good at that because I have a pathological comfort with ambiguity. I off the spectrum. I am completely okay with. I don't know any of that, and I'm okay with all of that. And that's actually sort of a weakness actually when it comes to running much larger organizations where a load of the people who work in that organization need a clear route forward, as opposed to a whole series of options. And so there's a bunch of stuff that helped me in that, and then there's a number of things that didn't from a leadership perspective that I had to build elsewhere. The last thing I'll say is, and this is there's a lot that you can learn on the ground in biotech, and my exercise of the last 9 years has been just immense amount of learning from a leadership, organizational, science, business perspective. But the large pharmaceutical companies, I think large companies in general, run pretty effective leadership development for their people. And so I did have the opportunity to take advantage of some fairly structured and fairly, what I now understand. At the time, I'm not sure I really understood the value of this. Always, but now looking back, I'm like, I got access to some world-class leadership thinking that evolved me and was incredibly useful when I did step into this CEO role.
Yeah, very good. Very good. All right. So in the time that we have left, which is very little, I want to maybe glean some insight from you around the approval. It's something that, a lot of biotech CEOs maybe never get to experience. But when they do, like when you're moving into that experience and you're leading through it. And I know this is a giant it's a terrible one to end on because you could go really long on it. We'll do it another time. We'll do it another time. We'll do it another time. We'll get into the whole, I mean, the clinical, I'd love to have an hour-long conversation with you about your clinical trials experience. We'll do that another time. But I guess, what are some of the more pithy or valuable lessons that you learned recently in this approval process that you might feel compelled to share with another biotech founder or CEO who is, maybe on the cusp of one, hasn't experienced one,
So I think one, it will take longer than you think.
Okay.
Particularly if you haven't experienced it, it is almost certain to take longer than you think. And it will require substantially more resource than you anticipate. And particularly if you come from a large pharma, that might not be obvious because they have large departments and groups that do this stuff, and those resources are available. Whereas with a small company, you have to be explicit about either having them or accessing them, and it's substantial. So I used to say that something like a quarter of the company during the BLA was pretty much dedicated to getting that BLA. So that's 100 and something people for the course of 18 months or so. That's one. I think secondly, and this I think people will debate because I think there's always diversity of opinion on this, but there is a time and a place to have scientific debate with the agency and to try to drive for the best possible answer. I would suggest that time and place is not while you're trying to get a product approved. When you're trying to get product approved, first part is, okay, let me understand really what the agency wants and make sure that those are well thought through. And then the last piece of that, which goes on for decent amount of time of writing and then engagement with the agency, is delivering that, not arguing about it, not suggesting that it should be something different. Just, okay, how do I deliver what the agency has told me that they need, particularly when they've told you repeatedly, and particularly where it might not be what you want to hear. You might think you have a better answer, but actually the answer is consistent with the agency's role. And so I think there's a lot of biotech companies, and I certainly saw a lot when I was in BD, who would say, hey, yes, the agency asked for this, but we're going to do this instead. And then they're surprised when the agency sends them a letter saying, we're not approving your product because we asked you to do this and you didn't. Now, that's obviously subject to nuance. I'm not suggesting the agency is omniscient, but in that process of approval, they are omnipotent. And so, whilst you can discuss and make sure that you are aligned on what you want to have, at the end of the day, your job is to deliver that and to get that product approved, since that, for most companies, is the most important thing you're doing at that point in time.
Yeah. Incredible. That's super thoughtful advice. Great response. Do you have time to just wrap it up with one more?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, just I'm hoping we can wrap things up with a look ahead without saying anything forward looking that's going to get you in trouble. What's going on with the pipeline now post approval, and what's on the immediate horizon for Adrian Rawcliffe?
So post approval of Tecelra, we're launching. We're rolling out into the ATCs. If you go onto the tecelra.com website, you'll see that there are 7 treatment centers accepting patients referrals at the moment. They're building that up to 30, so we've got a network across the country that will cover the patients with synovial sarcoma. These are the top sarcoma centers of excellence in the country. Behind Tecelra is Leticel. Leticel is very similar to Tecelra, an engineered TCR T-cell therapy for soft tissue sarcomas. It's about 2 years from approval. It completed its pivotal trial, so we're moving forward with that to get that registered, and then we'll be able to commercialize that through exactly the same footprint that we've developed for the launch of Tecelra. So there's a lot of operational synergies there. We feel really good about that. And then behind that is a pipeline of products targeting things that are not sarcomas. User-cel is the most advanced. That's in a phase 2 study, could potentially be registrational, depends on data and timing, etc. For platinum-resistant ovarian cancer. Starting to get into those larger oncology markets where cell therapy, I think, should be able to really demonstrate the benefits of a one-off therapy that with hopefully transformative benefit in those broader tumor types. But all that to be proven. Long-term, whole load of preclinical stuff moving into the clinic over the next 24 months as well. So I think integrated pipeline, Tecelra, the first product. We've got to do a good job with Tecelra, because apart from anything else, as well as getting to the patients with Tecelra who desperately need it, I think it will also reflect on the opportunity in the rest of the pipeline if we are successfully able to commercialize Tecelra. So
yeah,
all eyes
very
on
exciting.
that.
Very exciting. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Adrian. You're, like I said, I really appreciate the sincerity and thoughtfulness in your responses to my questions. There's a ton of value here, I think, for our audience, and I really appreciate your time.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.